So I've wanted to do this video for a while. I really have no idea what I'm doing with these two. But look what we've got here. A couple of Stihl ms200t's. These are pretty much the holy grail of arborist saws. If you're climbing, you know exactly what these are. And I've never used one personally. I've just heard about them. And I have a number of tree guys that have these, and they've asked me, gee, can you work on them? And the answer to that question is, well, probably, but it's not like I really know what I'm doing. I've never worked on one of these before. I have a shop manual now. Thank you to Lone Wolf on Arborist site. Thank you to Steve for being generous enough to lend me these to play with. He basically said, you know, fix them up. So, more or less at this point, I'm not sure that cost is necessarily an object, because these are not easy to find. They're pretty pricey saws. Certainly you're looking at, if you want a new old stock one, I imagine it's probably north of $1,000 on eBay at this point, if you can even find them. Probably close to $1,200, maybe even more. A lot of guys prefer these to the newer models, the 201s, and there's any number of reasons why. So I'm not going to get into any of that. What I wanted to do was to do a bolt for bolt video here, and I want to take these down, tear these down, show you what the process is, show you how I do things per usual, and I'm going to take some of the suggestions from the guys online, because I really value what they've got to say too. So let's tear these down and see what's up. Now, the report on these is that Steve wore these out. That's what he said. So they need to be worked on. Well, I assume that they don't run. Let's take that right off the bat. But I've already, you can see the clamp on this one. I've already actually done a compression test. And sure enough, we got about 150 pounds of compression in that thing. So that's good. That means no damage has occurred in there. But either he's lost fuel or spark. Pretty simple. Or the timing is off, but that would be unlikely on a stock saw. So one way or another, he's lost fuel or spark, so we're going to look into that eventually. This one here is all kinds of beat up. You can see that he doesn't have a chain brake handle on this. And these covers are kind of worse for wear. Now, more or less, most of these tree guys don't really care how these look. They just care that they run, and they got to run reliably day in and day out. Don't know if I can get you there, but we're going to try. So, let's make sure that these are empty, more or less. So let's start taking these down. Just take them apart, see what can be done and what the process is, and do some diagnosis along the way. So what we want to do here first is kind of figure out, a compression test is always a good start. See exactly where you're at there. And also a pressure and vac test. Now, I haven't done a whole lot of pressure and vac testing. I do kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So I probably should get into doing more of that. So let's do a proper pressure and vacuum test here. Now, what we're trying to do with that is that the seals on either side of the crank here may be fine. They may not be. Some seals hold pressure but not vacuum. So we'll go through that. And then hopefully we'll be able to repair it, replace parts as needed, put it all back together, and pray that it runs. And I guess we're going to do two of them, because I happen to have two, but I know that there are lots others in the works that need kind of gone over. So let's have some fun. So let's go through and do some of the basics first. We'll hit the high points here. First thing I'm going to do is, let's remove this cover here. 1 bolt, 19 millimeters. The usual steel bolt. For each saw, I'm going to get a magnetic tray, maybe 2 of them actually, and make sure I don't mess anything up as far as that goes. The other thing you want to do is you want to keep a list of what parts you want to replace. And as of right now, I don't think we need to replace this cover. It's more or less intact. Still pretty strong, but we do need to replace the chain brake handle. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label these saws. So this is saw number 1, and this is Steve. So put an S there. And then this is Steve's saw number 2. At least they're labeled. Looks like you need a pretty big screwdriver to undo the cover here. That one's slightly too big. That's perfect. Ooh, that's kind of gunked up. Also a box to put all these parts in. I think the easiest thing to do is get a new air filter. Let's take off the spark plug. And undo the spark plug. $10 says we're going to need a new plug. If you're doing a teardown like this, just good policy to put a new plug in. So now we can actually look for signs of damage inside here. And off the bat, I don't see a little bit of blow-by the rings, maybe. Can't see too much right now. So on other sides you can, but these top handles, the access is not good. Let's do a compression test right off the bat and see what that reveals. Because we got good compression, then it means hopefully we're not doing a complete teardown. But maybe we will. Maybe we'll take this apart just for the heck of it anyway. Put a new ring in or something. Clutch just fell off. How many clutches fall off when you're doing a compression test? Ooh. Ooh, ooh. I don't know if you can see this, but let's see. It looks to me like the needle bearing in there is shot. I don't know if you can see that. But something in there is in deep trouble. So, might be a real simple fix overall on this saw. So we need a clutch side needle bearing. I think Steve's going to be happy with that. 150 pounds, 145, close enough. So, in reality, this saw is doing pretty good. Also, I don't know what happened with that needle bearing, but it looks like this white piece, whatever this is, looks pretty torn up. On the other saw I'm working on, the clutch just literally fell off. It was very loose. On this saw, the clutch is not loose. So what if you want to take the clutch off? So let's figure out how to do that. Let's see if we can do it with a rope and a 13mm wrench. So we make sure that we're very careful putting the rope in here. I need to create a piston stop. Now, there are any number of ways of doing this. So rope goes into the spark plug hole. Now we've got a piston stop. Not an adequate piston stop. More rope in the spark plug hole. Good. Okay, so that's still tight. A little bit of PV blaster helps. Now, what drives me nuts about both companies, both Husky and Stihl, when they give you a nut here to grab, it's not very much meat. They could give you another 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, and it would be a whole lot better, so you could actually grab the silly thing. Right now, no matter what, you're kind of risking stripping this out. There's no really good leverage either. There. 13mm wrench. Clockwise unscrews it. And your clutch comes off. Clutch off. Drum, needle bearing, and the oiler pinion should just come out like that. On the other side I was working on, this was stuck in there. So this is more how it should go. I'll play around with dismantling the rest of this at a later date. I want to leave this as far assembled as possible. That way, in case the other saw doesn't provide us a good example, I can use this one. For all Stihl stuff, you need a T27 Torx. They use it nearly ubiquitously in all their stuff, all their screws. 1, 2, 'Looks like there's another screw up here. 3. Off bumper. This whole cover looks like it comes off. Yuck. So 3 screws and a bumper and a bumper. Might as well take both the bumpers out. These look okay, a little worn, but certainly reusable. One. 2 screws in the oiler. 2 small screws. Usually on the Huskies, you just lift up, the whole thing comes right out. So I'm having to guess here, but this oiler pinion is actually stuck. And so normally I think it comes right out, but right now it's not doing that. So I am prying this up as carefully as I can to not ruin something here. But theoretically this whole thing should just slide right off. And here's the oiler. It will probably be fine. I'm going to take this and clean it. Might as well do that. So now we've got the clutch side seal exposed. And so we have two torque screws on the bottom. I think they hold the muffler on. They are not on very tight. There's one. There's two. It looks to me like I want to take this bottom plastic cover off if I can possibly. And even those are tighter. Is that cracked? Yeah, but hopefully it's not that big of a deal. One, two, three. Relatively small machine screw. Looks like the starter cover is in here as well, so let's take the starter cover off. We really only need the starter cover for, can't quite get to that one, for doing compression testing. Machine screw there. Machine screw. Just to make it confusing. Because I have the other unit, I can better describe this. So we have two machine screws towards the front for the starter cover and two bigger screws towards the back. I'm actually, because that gets confusing, you know what, I may just put these right back in here. Sometimes it's better just to put the screws back where you found them temporarily, so you have an idea of what you're doing when you're putting the thing back together, especially if you're not familiar with it. Looks like we have two screws on the top here. Let's see. One. Machine screw. Two machine screws at the top. These machine screws, what's that? 20 millimeters, maybe a little less. Oh. Exhaust gasket. Put that to the side. Exhaust comes out. Does that look like a complex exhaust to you? Sure does to me. Oh. Another piece fell out. Seems to me like there should just be something else that just falls off. This almost looks like it broke, but I'm not so sure that it did. Don't know what that is or where it goes. Seems like there should be a cap, you know, just... There's not. Something I forgot to check. Check squish. I can get at least an approximate reading here. Stick the solder in. Clamp it on down. I don't know how much modification we're going to do to this saw, if any at all. But it doesn't hurt to check squish right off the bat. So 25 and 10. 35 thousandths. Pretty tight. Let's take off these two AV screws right here. Maybe just this AV mount entirely, leave those there. Let's see what happens when we do this. So we're going to chalk these up to odd AV mount screws. They're a little odd looking. Helps to have a long T27. Just a single machine bolt here. Looks to me like I have to work with these guys. Let's undo those. Good guess, 8mm. Two 8mm nuts. Plastic carb flange. Looks okay. Get that cleaned. Looks like the throttle linkage can be simply moved out of the way. Oh, this is the tank vent, I suppose. Looks kind of dirty. I'll get it cleaned. And then this is either gas or impulse. Again, probably do want to put a new piece in there. May not have to, but that's the gas line. So I don't know if you can see in there, but move the gas line out the way. You have to remove this. Don't know what this is. Tiny little screw holding something metal in. Don't know what that was. Put that aside, figure it out later. Well, looks like the intake is what's kind of holding me back. Makes most sense, just pull the carburetor out. Ah, that was what was up. This piece here, this blocking plate needs to come out. Then you can pull the carburetor out. So I'll get a carburetor kit for that, just to refresh that. So I'd really like to get a pressure test done. I can't quite do that yet. I got to get the flywheel off. So let's take off the flywheel. And my favorite for this is the impact. So I pulled the nut off, 13 millimeter. And if you have the impact, you can just hold it. Not even going to hurt you. A little bit of PB blaster here. And I'm pretty sure I have to hit that with my hammer in order to loosen that. Now, I know how many guys don't like me doing this, and I know that there are better tools for this type of thing. For instance, something called a knocker, and you screw the knocker down here and hit that. But I don't have such a thing, so I'm going to do it this way. So you need a hammer that actually fits. That's it. Yep. You need a hammer that actually fits inside here. Otherwise you're hitting the flywheel itself. You don't want to do that. So that came off pretty easy, actually. You want to make sure that you unscrew the flywheel nut and that it's more or less flush, maybe slightly up from the crank itself, so that when you hit down on it, you don't hurt anything. Might as well clean that up. Ooh, there's a piece I don't want to forget. So there is a key way in this flywheel, which is, in my opinion, the proper way to do it. Which also means that there is a key here on the crank. Don't want to lose that. It is magnetic, thankfully. So I'm going to put that on the magnet tray. Sitting here trying to figure out exactly how do I get this whole assembly off, because it doesn't seem to want to come off. I think I have an idea, but before we get there, let's take this ring out, and don't forget that when you put the whole thing back together. But now what we're supposed to do is jam a piece of rubber down in here, or maybe even just something round, and that should theoretically hold pressure. And then what we have to do is put the muffler back on, preferably with a piece of rubber